Jiro here for Umbra Games with a review of Ghostwire Tokyo, released March 25th, 2022, available exclusively on PS5 and PC until 2023 allegedly, which since it's published by Bethesda with developer Tango Gameworks underneath them, and Microsoft owning Bethesda, would make sense this wouldn't be exclusive forever, eventually finding its way to Xboxes. Tango Gameworks' previous works include Evil Within 1 and 2, both survival horror-y games, so it's easy to think that they might keep that up here. Instead, Ghostwire Tokyo actually feels a bit more like open-world horror in the vein of Dying Light, and something I'd throw into my open-world mission procedural genre. You play Akito, who dies along with the rest of a good chunk of Tokyo at the beginning of the game, and is possessed and reanimated by the spirit of KK, who tries to take over his body. The two eventually come to an agreement that their goals align, Akito trying to save his sister who is still alive, and KK at stopping the forces that caused the citywide deaths. KK grants Akito the use of his powers. The game is played entirely in first person, and Akito has access to elemental spells of wind, water, and fire, a bow and arrow, and a handful of talismans to fight against the hordes of ghosts that have invaded Tokyo. You can access the map at any time with the touchpad, showing your location as well as tons of icons around you depicting side missions, shops, fast travel points, payphones, and if you've been in the area of certain collectibles, those will show as well. One thing I've always kind of noticed is when a developer makes their first open world game, they tend to get a little giddy about collectibles, and Tango Gameworks has pushed this to the afterlife and beyond, as I'll detail here in a minute. The game, for all intents and purposes, plays like a first-person shooter. Instead of a gun, Akito makes hand movements to launch elemental projectiles. R2 fires, and if you need a little help with aiming, if your reticle is close to a target, pressing L2 will adjust your reticle to center mass to assist. The default control setting for this game was really awful. In the menu, you can control X and Y acceleration, sensitivity, and dead zones. It took me a good 5 to 10 minutes playing with this to get it kinda close. Then I finally did a quick internet search and found a Reddit discussion for this very issue and set it up accordingly. If you've played this game and left it in the default, please explain yourself in the comments, at least for PS5. Anyway, each of the three elements can be charged to slightly enhanced effect by holding down the R2 button and releasing. You have an ammo count in the lower right for all three individually, and this is refreshed by breaking objects in the environment that kind of have a glow to them and look misplaced in this world to reveal colored ether pyramids. You can suck these in from a distance with L2. You can raise your max ammo count with each individually by finding a set of collectibles, of course. As you inflict damage on your foes, you'll see a glowing core start to be exposed. Once you've done enough damage, you have a chance to rip that core out and save yourself a little ammo. Destroyed enemies will also drop ether. You have a block with L1 to reduce damage from incoming attacks, and of course, a perfect block, which you have to time your button press correctly to stop all incoming damage. Stealth can play a part in combat, but it's my favorite type of stealth. Begin an encounter by crouching and sneaking and taking down as many foes as possible, but if you get discovered, just go into full combat mode and finish the encounter like that. I will say the enemies move pretty slowly and turn even slower, so unless you're just in a group where they're all looking at each other, it's pretty simple to get multiple stealth kills. When an enemy is aware of you, you'll notice a yellow equalizer looking mark around the circle in the middle of your screen indicating the direction the enemy is spotting you from. After that fills up, it'll start to turn orange, and then red, and then combat is on. One thing I really enjoyed is the street lights and other ambient lighting will change from their normal white light to yellow to red as well, giving a bit of unsettling effect during combat. Overall though, the game's combat was fairly easy. You eventually unlock a super mode by clicking in both sticks, I think it's called wired mode, which can be recharged by normal combat. But I usually just kind of forgot about it because I didn't need it. Same with talismans. There's ones that can stun all enemies in an area, one that can make a shrubbery to hide you, and it's just never necessary. I only ever used the talismans when it was part of a learning tutorial. A charged firebomb by holding R2 and releasing can get overwhelmingly devastating, getting multiple enemies ready for core rip at once and stumbling bigger ones. The rapid fire wind shots took care of most of the bigger enemies pretty easily as well. I actually thought I'd get tired of the combat though, but I was still okay with it after 22 hours. The game does have a few bosses, and only 2 of them that I can recall had actual tactics other than just blast away, which was a bit disappointing. For a 20-hour game though, I think there was enough enemy variety, even though it was just usually different clothes than fatter men, and different schoolgirl clothes on those, and different dresses on the creepy scissor women. You can jump with the X button, and usually you'll mantle over objects that are just above your line of sight. I did have a little issue with really having to line yourself up perpendicularly to the object you want to climb, which on some rooftops was a bit annoying but not unmanageable. You'll eventually gain a couple extra traversal skills, including a grappling hook you can use on floating yokai, and a glide that can be activated when you're jumping from a tall structure. When KK is possessing Akito, you'll also have access to his spectral vision. This places a blue outline around objects with which you can interact, and also shows the outlines of enemies through walls. This is helpful in locating quest objectives and collectibles too. As you gain experience, you level up. Each level gives you 10 spirit points to invest in the 3 different skill trees. First tree is the ability tree, and you can do things like increase speeds of enemy core ripping, and an increase in glide time from jumping from high structures. The elemental tree boosts your various elemental shots. Finally, the equipment tree, which does things like increase carrying capacities and bow draw speed. As far as equipment goes, there are quite a few cosmetic changes you can make, but utility-wise, there are only prayer beads. There are a couple different ways to acquire the various prayer beads, and the great thing is when you get more than one of the same kind, it levels it up, increasing in power. You have options like attack power for each element and doubling money fines. Money can be used in a few ways, the first of which, of course, is shopping in the various cat-run stores all over Tokyo. First, there are convenience stores where you can purchase food to restore health. You have a capacity limit on a per-food basis. Secondly, the shrine shops where you can refill arrows and talismans. And finally, the rare collector cats sell cosmetics, collectibles, and soundtrack. You'll also be able to get spiritual by giving offerings at shrines for map revelations and random status changes. Your maximum hit points will increase a couple percent with every level up to the game's max of 50. But also every food item you consume, in addition to restoring your current HP, will give you plus 0.4 HP as well. And that definitely adds up. There are basic food and drink you can buy from vendors, and then nether food, which can be discovered as you explore. The nether food, in addition to the HP boost and restoration, will give you a temporary buff to things like attack power or stealth. Main missions are generally pretty straightforward. You'll have a yellow icon on your map, and you'll collect things, kill things, and obviously push forward the game's story. There are also over 40 green icon side missions. These typically open when you uncover a new little hub, and some are dependent on others being completed. There's quite a variety in side missions. A good deal of them start with ghosts that can't go to the afterlife for one reason or another, often leading you down a spooky investigation path of disturbances, angry specters or demons causing trouble. Not all ended with combat or just killing something, although most did have an end resolution of, oh, hey, there's an angry specter doing this. But I actually found most of them pretty entertaining, and as such, knocked them all out in my playthrough. So yeah, let's start talking collectibles, but let's start with our mini-hubs. When everyone got wiped out, it set a dense fog throughout the area, and touching it drains your life. You can clear this fog by cleansing the Torii gates, which of course usually have some sort of enemy encounter involved. Then you hold L2 on a gate to cleanse it. This reveals some major icons in the areas like shops and phones and side missions, in addition to making it safe to travel around the area. So then we have spirits. Even though everyone was killed in the opening cutscenes, their spirits remain, and Akito and KK take it upon themselves to harvest all of these spirits and send them to the mysterious Ed through payphones spread across the city. There are 240,000 spirits. Yes, you heard me. Harvesting these jumbles will grant you 1 to, I guess, like 900 a couple times in a single pull, and you put them into Katashiro, little paper doll looking things that were in Studio Ghibli's Spirited Away. You start with 10 of these and can earn and purchase up to 50, at which point, when they're full, you have to dump them all out in the payphone. I would say this is probably the main source of experience in the game. For example, turning in 50 Katashiro at a time, I'd gotten as much as 15,000 experience, whereas completing a side mission is 500 experience. Killing the most basic enemy is about 50. These spirits are in alleys, on rooftops, sometimes as ambush bait, leading you into surprise encounters. Some spirit clumps are bound with affliction, and you have to use hand gestures by moving the stick in a required pattern to free them, and then you can absorb them. If there are multiple clumped together, you can suck them all in at the same time. Some spirits have to be saved from the random binding cube events you'll occasionally stumble across. Enemies will continually deplete the percentage of the cube, and if that goes to 0, you lose that cube's worth. These aren't missable. This event will keep popping until you have the maximum amount, which will show on the map. There's also a Parade of Ghosts event that is a little rarer, where ghosts are marching down the street and will suck you into the underworld for a battle. These dropped about 2,000 spirits and also have a maximum contribution to the 240,000. Next, I don't think it's much of a spoiler, but KK was a cop in his previous life and had an affinity for investigating supernatural occurrences. His notes are a form of collectible found throughout the city, and not very obvious where. Some of the rare item cat vendors will sell you one for 100,000 as well. You can look at more detail when you pick these up. A lot of the investigations are backgrounds on enemy types and things you encounter, but more importantly, each one nets you 20 spirit points, which can be used to upgrade skills and abilities from the skill trees. Next are relics. If I had to estimate, I'd say there's probably 100 to 150 of these. These range from creepy dolls to ancient swords, and are pretty evenly distributed throughout the map, sometimes in interior areas. There's a small cat whining noise when you're in the vicinity, and it will also pop a little yellow icon onto the map in case you need a little more direction. Each item can be sold to a specific rare item cat vendor, and once their individual stall is discovered, you can fast travel and deliver it to them for a decent sum of cash. Now, I mentioned collectibles to increase your elemental ammo max capacity, and these are the Jizo statues. Each statue has a corresponding element that will increase that max by 1. There are 52 total spread across the city. In shrines that have an offering box, you can pay 500 cash to have one revealed on the map if there are any in that sub-area. I found these particularly difficult to spot without that. Some side missions will introduce an Oni, which is an unseen being in Japanese. I know a lot of time in video games they're demons and enemies, but that's not always the case. After a side mission has been completed, then other Oni of that type will have icons that appear on the map. Some need to be chased, some have to be stealth, some need defended, and with each you receive a Magatama as a reward. There are a few side missions also that reward these. On each skill tree there'll be a block for certain advanced skills, and the collection of these is how you remove those barriers. One side mission starts a Tanuki hunt. There are 25 of these guys spread across the city, and they've shapeshifted into something else, usually a little out of place and with a wagging tail that will show up in spectral vision. This was the only green icon side mission tied to a collectible set. And finally, we have all the cosmetics and music tracks. You can buy these items mainly from the cat vendors that will buy your relics. You also open some cosmetic outfits and pieces by completing main and side missions. And there you have it. I always enjoy games that let me explore foreign cities, especially Tokyo, so I was all for the environment here. Granted, it was always nighttime, but it usually had a nice blood moon to go with it, plus the city lights are always impressive. The game's score fit well, provided moments of tension, and overall was really great quality. Overall, Ghostwire Tokyo has a great world map, environmentally and design-wise, interesting side missions, and a main mission set that kept me wondering what was going on, too many collectibles, but most did provide a benefit, some more than others, enemy types that could have possibly used a little more variety, and combat that does the job but is a bit on the easy side on normal difficulty, and the game just had a great and unique atmosphere altogether. Rated as an open world mission procedural, Ghostwire Tokyo gets a 72 out of 100 on my true 0 to 100 scale, where 50 is an average game. This is Jiro for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching.